Hi, everyone. My name is Gail Crooks. I am a member of Lapeer County. I'm a resident here. I live up near Otter Lake. I was born and raised on a farm up there and left to go to school and then have a career for 30-some years out of state, but came back about 10 years ago to be with my family. And so I'm here and have gotten involved as a retired person, volunteering and working on charitable issues. I think I should call it charitable. 7 years ago, I helped start Lapeer County Equal Rights Alliance, called LCERA. There were at that time those of us who felt that there might be incidences of bias and prejudices and discrimination in the county that we wanted to address that we didn't like, and we just wanted to start a group to get together and look at it, and we did. We started a 501c4, not a 501c3, so we are capable of doing political work and working on ballot issues. But we started that group, and I've been chair of that for all that time, for 7 years. I'm also an active member of a statewide committee called Michigan Alliance Against Hate Crimes, and I bring that group up to you because that is our big organization that can help us here in this county as we organize trying to develop a community response team that can respond to bias or incidences of hate crimes before they occur, number one, and then as they occur, and try to be effective in slowing the hate and bias down. Michigan Alliance Against Hate Crime, that state group, was started as a partnership between the attorneys generals of the state and the Michigan Department of Civil Rights Commission, as a mandate actually from Governor Engler because of issues that were happening that time in down south in the Detroit area, and that stayed going and is still being funded, and though they're cutting back a lot on it as other state things, but that is our big organizing group, and it's a big group. It has about 70 federal and local state law enforcement agencies, civil rights organizations such as LCERA, the Lapeer County Equal Rights Alliance is one of those groups, community-based groups of other kinds, educators and anti-violence advocates, working to have a consistent and effective response to bias and hate as they occur throughout the state. It has provide resources for groups such as the one we're just starting, the one you have a flyer for in your book, the Lapeer County Coalition to Prevent Hate Crimes. As I said, it is statewide. It's involved with Homeland Security is involved with it, other federal agencies, the FBI. So we have a good little model to help us as we move on with our little group here. Community groups such as Lapeer County Coalition to Prevent Hate Crimes organize themselves within the county as they see fit and as they need to organize depending upon the groups that are available to them. We have different social groups and civil rights groups than Detroit does, so we have different resources. And so that's what... Can you all hear me all right, even when the microphone goes okay? But we believe that communities can take ownership of their bias climate and become knowledgeable about it and organize local groups to do something about the situation and to prevent them in the future. I believe that an organization that responds to issues of bias and hate can really help the victim and his family and his group and help the community as a whole. Regarding the business community, which is the reason all of us are here today, we need, in this county, in these bad economic times, to present to the world that we are a community that welcomes new people and the diversity that they bring, so that if there's an economic turnaround and we start to grow, I wish you could give me news that that's happening today, but as we start to grow and get better, we may become more diverse, and that will bring in different ethnicities and different races and groups that may need help adapting here. You have before you a copy of our flyer that can acquaint you with the Lapeer County Coalition to Prevent Hate Crimes. And our mission is on there right in the front. The mission of the Lapeer County Coalition to Prevent Hate Crimes is to provide a safe and respectful community free of bias and hate incidences. And it's pretty simple, it's pretty broad, and very flexible. And we need it very flexible because we don't quite know what all is available here and how we can all get together and work together. But it is our commitment that we can get together and work together to do this, and to do it without governmental support necessarily. We can do that here in the community without taxing the federal and state governments, and we can control our hate climate. There are a couple of good reasons for supporting a community response system here. The first one is Lapeer has had a couple of hate crime events in the past 2 or 3 years, and there are probably more bias incidences and things happening than we read about or know about or want to admit to ourselves sometimes. But hate crimes just generally around the country seem to be growing. I don't know whether that's part of a reporting mechanism or whether that's because of the economic downturn, whether some phenomenon like that occurs during economic downturns. Also, as our economy starts to grow, we would be at risk for more bias events unless we look at dealing with them now and organizing and anticipating them and hoping to prevent them and stop bias events before they lead to crimes, hate crimes. I believe the business community is very vulnerable to bias events. If the store's clients gets the idea that they're not welcome, or if the clerks at your store feel that they're not being treated right by the community, that business is disrupted and is not, it won't work. They won't come back. I hope I'm getting closer. Thank you, Nina. Michigan has one of the highest numbers of hate groups in the nation. Hate groups are those groups that organize under principles which set them off from other groups. They may be groups like the Aryan Nation, or they may be there are other groups. And Michigan has one of the highest incidences of those, and they really do speak hate and bias. And Michigan has a high number of those higher than other states, and up here in the thumb especially. Also, regarding the business communities, if workers express bias to their co-workers or to their clients, business will suffer. If shopping areas where people congregate aren't safe for people of diverse characteristics, those people will spend their time and money someplace else. So let's bring in some money. And it's time the communities get together and assume the responsibility for that and take care of it before it happens and as it happens. Communities can make themselves clear that they will not tolerate at all bias and hate, and that communities that do that can be confident saying that everyone is welcome to come here and live and shop. On the flyer you have before you will see the definition of bias, incidences, and hate crimes. Bias incidences, as you'll read that, are non-criminal activities that harm another person because of that person's membership in a classification such as race, color, ethnicity, national origin, sex, gender, identity and expression, sexual orientation, disability, age, or religion. And I list those out because they're listed out in law, and they're listed out differently in different legal venues. The federal government has just recently included sexual orientation and disabilities as, and I believe gender preference, as a high area of bias instances and hate crimes being directed to. So they've listed that, and there are groups in the state of Michigan that are trying to get that listed as a bias classification, those things here, and they've been doing that for a couple of years. Examples of criminal acts that become hate crimes because they are committed by the reasons of the victim's protected class, because their race is one of their attacked because of their race, their ethnicity, or those other areas, and that includes assault and battery, aggravated assault, theft, criminal trespassing on a residence, in a vehicle, or damage to properties, disorderly conduct, or harassment by telephone or through electronic message communications. And that's very important on the internet, and we read more and more about people who are being assaulted on the internet regarding racial or bias issues. According to the United States Department of Justice, a hate crime is a crime of violence, property damage, or threat that is motivated in whole or part by an offender's bias towards some of those areas. I just gave that to you and put it in the little flyer because I wanted you to have an idea of what bias incidences mean and what hate crimes are, so that when you discuss them, you have some basis for it. The courts have the law enforcement really labels an event as a hate crime or not. So they're one of the first areas to say this is a hate crime, and they do it based upon this legal verbiage. Byron Conshoe can have a little comment about that later on if you'd like. So why a community response system? Why do we want to have a system here and organize that responds and pulls together groups and advocacy groups and governmental agencies to respond to hate crimes? First of all, it's one of the most effective ways of addressing the kind of victimization that people experience in incidents of crime based upon hate. It is the way to respond to it. The local network, the Lapeer County Coalition to Prevent Hate Crimes, hopefully will be more attuned to local events and to resources in the community and be able to pull them together when something happens and do it in a way that's relevant and relates to those events. Based on the nature of the incident of the crime, it is paramount that a community respond in a really broad-based manner, channeling the community's emotions towards positive outcomes. 2 years ago, there was a bullying incident in the schools, which all of us remember, I'm sure, and that happened in mid-December, and then at our Lapeer County Equal Rights Alliance meeting in January, we discussed that, and it was out in the public by then. And there was, in the community, concern that was it being handled right? Were the police handling it right? Was it being handled right by the schools? And there were issues flying around, and I think that people were concerned and upset. But there was no way of them to get together to express that concern or to receive any information on bullying. And certainly there wasn't much information from law enforcement because of the nature of the event. We have laws that prevent that kind of talking. But Lapeer County Equal Rights Alliance decided that we needed to get together and to present a program and give people a venue to talk and to give them educational information. It may have been a class that could have been done better, but it did do well, and it got 130 some people coming that got together, and there was anger expressed and there was concern. But I think that meeting and getting together of community people, the community together, helped stop those feelings. So I think it was an important response in calming down the community, and it gave me a lesson in how important it is that the community do step forward at the time and respond and do some of the best that they can in whatever ways they have with whatever resources. Community response can take special care to reassure the victim and or the victim's group that the perpetrator of those responsible, the perpetrator of the events, do not speak for the entire community. When events like this happen, individuals, certainly the victim, feels that the whole community is out after them. And the victim's group does too. And beyond that, the whole community may isolate those groups because they're afraid to be and associate with them because they're an abused group and they don't want to be a part of them. So it's really a vicious cycle, hate and bias is. Many hate crimes and bias incidents are never reported to law enforcement. It's imperative the victims report to law enforcement if they suspect that there's hate crime or bias involved, because data needs to be collected and the police respond in their way to issues of hate and bias in special ways that get it reported and that work with it in that area. By reporting possible hate crimes, Enforcement groups, such as the law enforcement, and advocacy groups can track all these incidences and see trends that are happening. The community response system can use this data to gauge its effectiveness, so we would know in the data that's collected whether or not we're being any good. If there's a decrease or an increase, then we could work on that. Community response systems and Lapeer County Coalition to Prevent Hate Crimes hopes to get greater efficiency in emergency planning, so that we plan for events, any bias events that might happen. Have greater cooperation between city services, between nonprofit groups, and communities' business sector. Hope to collaborate and increase collaboration for skills development in the community and learning opportunities in businesses and in groups and organizations and in the community. We hope to have a better sharing mechanism for all the resources that can be mustered to help and prevent. We also believe that we can better build confidence between all the agencies, that we are working together and we can be effective and in helping. And as I say again, this is a way for us to do this without being a financial burden or depending upon the federal and state government to give us all that direction, but they are there for our help. So that is the background for it. Who specifically is affected by hate crimes? Number one, the individual. Bias crimes generally have a more harmful and emotional psychological impact on the individual than do ordinary violent crimes. It's totally different when you're attacked for your money or an armed robbery. That's more impersonal, and we sense that. But rather, the victim of a bias crime is attacked for a specific personal reason. For example, his race, religion, his ethnicity, or his sexual orientation. Moreover, the bias crime victim cannot reasonably change his condition. He can't change his color or his ethnicity or his race or his sexual orientation overnight to fit the needs of the community, what the community says they need, or what the perpetrators say they need. The heightened sense of vulnerability caused by bias crimes is beyond those found in usual crimes. Also, beyond the individual, the individual's group believes that they are being affected as a whole, and other groups like them. So if the Hispanic community is being has a bias incident event, other ethnicities might feel that, they're going to be after us too. This is a common feeling. The most interesting is the community as a whole, though, is affected, and people can tend to stay away from people who are victim and abused. So first of all, they're feeling isolated from the community if they're abused for something that they can't change. And secondly, if the community as a whole then doesn't socialize with them and they don't want their children with them because they're not safe to be with, or they feel that they're not safe to be with, then that isolation increases and more fracturing in the community exists, and it just isn't good. So that's all that I wanted to present to you, that little basic information to introduce the group. Byron, did you have a couple of comments on law enforcement's perspective on this?
I did.
Oh, you do? I'm surprised.
Nice job. I just want to mention that we in law enforcement always encourage community involvement and community coalitions as long as they're done correctly. And this one is being done correctly. All the appropriate parties are invited to the table. If any of you have any interest in joining the coalition, please contact Gail. But we in law enforcement are always mindful that people have the right under our Constitution to pursue life, liberty, and happiness, and they also have the right of freedom of speech. But we in law enforcement have to be very sensitive to when those lines are crossed and when that behavior becomes oppressive toward another person. And examples that I can use that our community and other communities have been very efficient at are in blocking drug activity from taking hold in your community. We don't have a lot of drug houses in our community that I'm aware of. we don't have any big-time drug dealers in our community that I'm aware of, because our law enforcement and our citizens work closely together. And that's the only way to keep drug dealers and drug houses out of your community, is for a community not to tolerate that behavior. If a drug house pops up in your neighborhood and you just kind of are intimidated by that, go the other way, go about your business and allow that activity to go, then it's going to fester, and it's going to foster other drug dealers from coming into your community. And we need active public participation, especially in these budgetary times. Many crimes are solved because someone calls 911, calls the thumb narcotics unit, gives us a tip, and we can act on it right away. The same thing happens with gang activity. The old broken windows theory of prosecution and prevention of gang activity. If you see a dilapidated house and the community cleans it up, if gang symbols are being painted on the bridges on the overpass, if they're being painted on abandoned buildings, and the city responds or the township responds and gets that cleaned up and gets it painted, shows some pride in your community, we do anti-bullying activities, we can keep gang activity out of our community. And we have done that. We've seen gangs try to take hold in a few of our communities over the years, and we keep the activities cleaned up, and we keep gang activity out of our communities. If a community tolerates that oppressive behavior, and the same thing happens with hate groups. They do leaflet drops, they do information drops, they might start holding a little meeting in your community. If we stand up and oppose that at those early stages, they can't take root in our community. And I applaud Gail and the coalition for taking early action. In my recollection, I've only been able to charge ethnic intimidation, I think about 2 times in the past 20 years. Does that mean there have not been other types of hate crimes and bias activities that took place? No, but there are 2 cases that have occurred. We acted on them quickly, we prosecuted them, we convicted them of ethnic intimidation, sent that message that it won't be tolerated in our community. So even though we don't have, that I'm aware of, a huge problem, the fact that we have a coalition in place, a response system in place, and a community that cares, I'm confident that we'll be able to maintain that reputation and keep hate and bias groups out of our community. And thank you very much, Gail.
Thanks, Byron. Thanks, Gail. I'm also a part of this particular group, and our last meeting we talked about this. It really is about a community taking ownership of its community and being aware and being educated and making sure, whether it's a work environment, whether it's our local high schools, whether it's our college campuses, these things do occur. I know that probably everyone has, seen or even maybe been involved in a situation where you see something that's happening to another person, and we see it on the news all the time, people turning their heads and not saying anything, and that's not taking ownership. Interesting, yesterday we had a call at the chamber office. This was from a gentleman who lives in another school district in Lapeer County, and there's been some issues, similar bullying and type things going on in the school system, where his 4 children go to school currently, and he is moving them from that district here to Lapeer because there have been issues. And that's what happens in a community when we don't take ownership and we don't understand and educate ourselves as to a bias crime and a hate crime and so on. And really pay attention to our environment, educate our staff, make sure our employees and our students and everyone in our environment every day is aware, so that it's people working together. And diversity should be a positive thing, not a negative thing. So that's really kind of what the coalition hopes to accomplish, and we are going to be networking with other individuals and other organizations in the community to really provide a support system, and we're really very fortunate to have Byron involved. He's been a great source of information and a great advocate for us too. So we're excited. It's going to grow. You'll hear more about it, in the coming months as we get more community agencies and organizations and leaders involved. So.